The arson definition here is defined to you in paragraph number 6, and above that in paragraph number 4 is what is considered to be the law of parties. What that says is that a person is criminally responsible as a party to an offense if the offense is committed by his own conduct, by the conduct of another for which he is criminally responsible, or both. A person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by another if, acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, he solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the other person in the offense. What that means is if you go back there and you believe that this defendant helped Beamel set himself on fire and eventually cause his own death, you can find her guilty of arson.
Arson is an intent to damage property. That is a misstatement of law, misstatement of the charge, and I would ask the jury be told to disregard those comments.
The law is within this charge. You can read it. We're not asking you to find her guilty of arson. We're asking you to find her guilty of capital murder. In paragraph 1, you will see the definition of capital murder. A person commits the offense of capital murder if she intentionally causes the death of an individual in the course of committing or attempting to commit the offense of arson. Intending to commit arson with the intent, in this case, to kill Bimal Patel. A person acts intentionally or with intent with respect to the nature of his conduct or to a result of his conduct when it is his conscious objective or desire to engage in the conduct or cause the result. When you get into paragraph number 5, this is the paragraph that becomes important in finding her guilty of capital murder. I'm going to ask that you go back and you read this paragraph very thoroughly, and I'm going to ask that you follow paragraph 5 and convict her of capital murder based on what the law tells you to do. The state has to prove every case beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal trial. Beyond a reasonable doubt. There used to be a definition for beyond a reasonable doubt. The legislature has since removed that definition. Now it comes down to what you believe beyond a reasonable doubt means. I'd ask that you ask yourself these 3 questions when you go back there. Look at the elements of this crime. Ask yourself, is there a doubt? If there's a doubt, then ask yourself, is it a doubt about one of the elements that the state has to prove? If it's not a doubt about one of the elements that we have to prove for capital murder, you can move on. If it is a doubt about one of the elements that we have to prove, then discuss it. Don't waste time on arguing about things that weren't needed to be proved. Okay? Pay attention to the law and the facts, and you will come to that conclusion. I want to discuss a little bit about the evidence that you've heard over the week. You've heard that this area here in North Austin and the Camden Apartments located off of Metric Boulevard, which you can see here in this map, tracks the intent, the premeditation, and I apologize, it's a little blurry, the intent and the premeditation of this defendant to kill her husband, Bimal Patel. You can see the Camden Apartments, and again I apologize for the blurriness. Camden Apartments are located here. The Walmart where the defendant started is here. The Exxon is here at the corner of this intersection, and then the police station is over here. What I'm asking you to do is take a look at this map. This clearly goes through the order of events that Ms. Patel decided to do when she woke up on April 17th in 2012. She made it to the Walmart. She called a cab and says, "Take me to the police station." I submit to you that this is a perfect landmark. If somebody can get her there, all she has to do is go straight into this apartment complex. She doesn't need to know how to turn left or right off of Metric Boulevard. She doesn't need to know where to stop, whether or not there's a stoplight, whether or not there's a stop sign. This police station is a perfect landmark for somebody that's in this area to end up here at the Camden Apartments. Again, you'll see from the map, all she has to do is take a straight line right down to Camden Apartments. Defense wants you to believe that Beamel was depressed, that he was suicidal. Okay? There's not any evidence of that. The defense has entered Defense Exhibit 27, which is a text message to one of his buddies February 17, 2012. They put a lot of emphasis on this text message. I'm going to ask you to read it. This is a text message about a guy who's got a lot going on. And what does he tell his friend in the very end? More so a personal night, meaning I'll probably be going out tonight. I'm fine, but at the same time I feel like I'm about to snap. Not bad, but more so like a super bent tree branch with a lot of weight on it. So hit me up later tonight. He's trying to get his buddy to go out with him. That's not suicidal. There's nothing suicidal about this. Ladies and gentlemen, apartment 223 at the Camden Apartments. What do we see when we walk through this evidence? Gas can here and closed off. You heard testimony that the gas can, if closed off completely and sealed, you may not ever smell the gas until that's opened. Each one of you can probably understand that if you walk into a garage that has a gasoline can that's closed. You don't smell gas every time you walk into a garage because it's sealed, it's closed. You then see bloody footprints through the apartment. You see a white 5-gallon bucket with a blue cup located right here outside the bathroom door. That blue cup is standing up perfectly inside that 5-gallon bucket. The door opens out. Ms. Patel steps in. She throws the gas, immediately closes the door, and starts the ignition and the source of the fire in this corner of the bathtub. The vapors, the gas, burned Beamel Patel to death eventually. Beamel Patel was not suicidal. Beamel Patel spent 4.5 months in Brooke Army Medical Center fighting for his life. He's fighting for his life for 4.5 months. Beamel Patel fighting for his life to get out of this bathtub. Shriya Patel struggles. His head clearly with the void here, laying in the bathtub as she throws gasoline on him. Your intent continues with this trip to Walmart, where she buys nylon rope, she buys masking tape, she buys candlesticks, and then what does she do? She goes and uses those to kill her husband. If the defense wants to claim that she helped him kill himself, or that he did this to himself, tell me how it makes sense then that they were intending to cook dinner that night. They're thawing out meat. Doesn't make any sense that they would plan on cooking if she were going to help him kill himself. It's not an accident. You can see the bucket there. You got the evidence. The bucket's here. Last thing I want to touch on, ladies and gentlemen, is Defense Exhibit number 26. I find something very interesting in this exhibit, which deals with the phone calls that Beamel Patel made and received and was outgoing. If you'll look at this document, you will see there were only 5 incoming calls to his cell phone. Only 1 in the very wee morning hours of April 17, 2012. If you look at his missed calls, the only time you ever see him miss a call from Shriya is on 4/15/2012. Nothing further. What you find the most interesting is that on the day that Ms. Patel was in there buying the goods to kill her husband, Beamel called her. Beamel called her at 8:28 in the morning, a call that lasted 49 seconds, just long enough for somebody to leave a voicemail. He called her again at 8:28:58. So less than a minute later, he tries to call her again. This time, duration of the call is not existent because she didn't answer. She never tried to call him back. She never talked to him. Why? Because she was in the middle of buying items that she was going to use to kill him. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to take the jury charge back with you. I'm going to ask you to use this first page and fill in guilty of capital murder. Thank you.
I may have trust. The last photograph. The state used the photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, Shriya Patel is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of assisting the suicide of her husband. That's what this evidence has shown to you this week. She is not guilty, just as she pled not guilty, of capital murder, and now the new charge that we've heard for the first time of arson. The evidence proves this conclusively. This is not even an argument about them not proving it. The evidence proves that it could not have happened the way that the state says it happened. Let's go back to the very beginning of this case and ask how it starts. It starts with an accusation, right? It starts with the accusation of Shriya Patel out on that balcony calling for help and blaming his wife. He accuses her. That's the way the case starts. Let's think about the very first thing we heard in this trial. When the deputy, the neighbor, hears the screaming. And he talks to you about hearing it, and he has to go put the dog up. He draws a diagram. And he sees her in the apartment. So she knows Bimal's calling for help. She knows Bimal's calling for the police. She's frozen. She doesn't leave. She doesn't run. There's no flight in this case. No indication of guilt. She's in shock. Because while she knew what he wanted to do to himself, the blaming part was a surprise. And so she's frozen there. That deputy told you something about, she said, I have to leave. Everybody in that apartment told you that they had to leave that apartment. Remember, they all had to back out. That deputy had kept her there, kept telling her, not physically, just say, stay, stay, in an apartment full of gas, so much so that they couldn't even do their investigation right away. And she stays. She does what she's told. So then we go to the police, and their job is to take the accusation and to investigate it. And we talked about this. That's their duty. That's what we pay them for. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of power. They are one of the highest paid police forces in the world, in the nation, Austin. All the resources in the world to investigate thoroughly a crime, especially the one of capital murder. Especially the one that is going to take away every day of freedom from that woman over there. So what do? They go into the apartment, they take some pictures, they make some photographs, they make some observations, they collect some evidence, and then they don't do much else other than accuse. Another accusation. She did it. Well, it's not enough to accuse. They have to bring the evidence. And so think about, what did they do to prove this crime to you? And I'd like to go through it because Sergeant Reardon was the one that introduced the state's theory to you. And if you remember, Bimal actually says she came into the room, and that's why the Hendricks patrol is in there. She came into the room, poured oil on me, and lit me on fire. Now that's a little different than the state's theory, because they know they have to change that a little bit, because oil is oil and gas is gas, and Bimal, all the American boy, would certainly know that smell. And so what they do is they have to add the element of surprise, right? That's the only way capital murder arson really works. Sneaks up on him, right? Throws the gas, that's their theory. 1 cup, throws the gas. Candles in there burning, remember? That's their theory. Candles already in there burning, all she has to do is throw the gas and close the door. Has to be that way because she's not inside. She's not, there's nothing on her. Not a drop. You heard not one evidence. In fact, we introduced evidence there wasn't anything on her. Nothing. So they know it has to be instant. They know it has to be a surprise. But here's the problem. What about the scene in that apartment is surprising? Nothing. There is no surprise here. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is Vimal's apartment. He's lived here for months. This girl is 5 days in that apartment. We know he went to work because he made some calls. Sure, she missed him. She was off buying the items that he wanted her to buy, absolutely. But he came home, 5 o'clock. And they were in that apartment together until we know a little after 9 o'clock when this incident happens. And so what happens? We have an open the door in the front with the gas can is open. She's not hiding anything. There's nothing hidden. They said it was on top of items, not under items, not behind items, nothing like that. Mr. Livingston made a big deal of, oh, well, if the gas cap is closed, you can't smell it, right? Well, remember it was open. Remember the spouts in the garbage. Not to mention that the theory is it went from that red gas can into an open white bucket. That's in evidence, the laundry bucket, right? Would have released all kinds of smells throughout that tiny apartment. All kinds of smells in that tiny little bathroom. He comes into his house where he's lived for months, and there's a smoke detector just laying on a speaker. There's a smoke detector that's taken out of the ceiling. There's tape all around, blue. Huge contrast with the white ceiling. It's a surprise. This is his house. He's been there for 4 hours. You can't do that while somebody's sitting on a table. That takes a lot of time. These are hardwired. These aren't just the type that you take off and you remove the battery. These are hardwired into the apartment. It takes time. It takes planning. Absolutely. Where was Bimal? He wanted it done. Obviously. He goes down the hall, he goes into the bathroom and he sees the same thing in his bathroom. He's gotten ready for work every day. And there you see it. Again, things were moved from the ceiling. Things were moved, taped up. They find the tape in there. It's burned off, but they find that the tape has been taped up there as well. So you're luring into a bathroom and you walk into that and you don't say anything? Honey, what's going on? What kind of sensual massage is this? It's his house. The prosecutor made a big deal of the meat that is thawing in the sink. And he says, that shows that Shriya Patel had a will to live, right? No, it doesn't. What did you learn today? Indian men do not go into the kitchen and cook. Don't do it. He wasn't thawing that meat. She was thawing that meat. What does that tell you? She was fulfilling her wifely duties. He was coming home. She took out the meat. She was planning to cook for him. And it tells you she got interrupted, didn't she? Her intention was to be a good wife. She was interrupted. Interrupted by something that would have taken a long time. From 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. He was there and he was directing her to do this. That proves it. They obviously proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt that she bought the items. Okay? Walmart tapes, the gas station tapes, that's the kind of proof you want. If they're going to say an accusation, that's the kind of proof you want. You want them to canvass the area. You want them to find it. You want them to bring it. That's all they want. Really, that's all they proved to you. She bought the items, and she helped him. The reason we put the map into evidence is that the state's theory that she asked for the police station twice doesn't really make sense if you look at it, because the police station is beyond her apartment. Okay, it makes sense if you're at Walmart and you know that police station's on the corner, sure, right? She speaks English. She can say take a left at Metric. It's a major, major intersection out there. She doesn't. She asked for the police station because she's worried. She's scared. She doesn't have anyone to call like Dr. Pedroca said. She's here all alone. She knows no one but that man that lives in that apartment with her and a few neighbors that she's managed to say hello to. Lured into a tub, a cold, dry tub. How many massages start like that? Does that even make sense to you? She covered me with oils. He knows the smell of gas. Not to mention when it covering you know the difference. He would know. Cotton balls up the nose. What kind of central massage starts with, sweetie? Just the cotton balls up the nose. A little massage. That doesn't make sense. That's a man who is going to douse himself with gasoline. You know that smell. It permeates your face almost when it's that close. So you put cotton balls in your nose so that you can stand it. So that as you're dousing yourself in there, you can follow through and you can do it. The state wants to say that there's this burning candle, remember? Well, what's the problem with that? What's holding the candle? Remember? No candle holders. Detective Reardon has it somehow, I don't know, mysteriously floating over the tub because there's no candle holder in the tub. And the candle's in evidence, ladies and gentlemen. You can look at it. It's not like the end is flattened or something where you can somehow stick it up on its own. There's nowhere for those candles to have been burning. Nowhere. So under his theory, the candle's just magically floating in the bathtub near B Mall when this cup is thrown. One cup, by the way. And it's thrown. And again, they have to do that because it has to be an element of surprise or else this just doesn't work. But what is the evidence that they actually brought you? Because the only real physical evidence before the fingerprints that we got on Monday was they tested the gas can and it tested positive for gas. Remember that evidence? Aren't you glad that we spent your taxpayers' dollars to test a gas can for gas and tell you it had gas in it? It doesn't tell you anything about this crime, it just tells you it's a gas and gas can. Thanks. They also swabbed the bathroom wall, and she testified about that. And guess what the result of that swab was? There was no gas on the bathroom wall. That blows their theory, doesn't it? Because if it's thrown, certainly there would be some gas in that corner where they think this started. Certainly. Reardon seemed like a really nice guy. But you saw how he was stretching for the state. You saw how when Mr. Livingston would have a problem, he would throw in like the thawing of meat. All of a sudden, he's an expert in the thawing of meat. He would stretch for the state. He would try to give them something that's going to make this theory work. But didn't measure how many ounces was in that cup. Couldn't tell you that. Didn't measure the bathroom. Look at his diagram, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a homemade drawing. It's not even to scale. He didn't even do any measurements of the bathroom, and that's critical under their theory, right? How small this is, how quick it is, how fast she could have done that. Critical. And you see, it's like, I don't know, 10 feet he's estimating. He doesn't know. They don't even do a to scale diagram. They don't even take the time to take out a measuring tape and do the simplest of police work. They hand you this diagram. This is roughly it. This gives you an idea. You want an idea, or do you want proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Critical question Mr. Sawyer asked him was, where's the rest of the gas? Because under your theory, you're missing about 110 ounces. Where is it? He says, I don't know. Didn't seem like he had even bothered to think it through, did it? Was it poured out? Is there evidence anywhere? So we got him to list anywhere else that gas could have gone, and he gave us a list. He said B-Mall, obviously. He said that there was a blue towel with gas in it. He said there were boxer shorts that had gas on it. And then they took some swabs, remember, of the bathroom. That had gas on it. And that's it. That's the only gas in this apartment. Nothing spilled in large quantities. Nothing appears to be dumped out. Not to mention, had to have been used. It was gone by the time all of this happened. Yet he can't account for that. 110 ounces of gasoline unaccounted for. Not to mention, there is absolutely no evidence of a throw. Think about that. You're trying to do this real fast and not a drop lands on the floor, right? Because the floor's not burned. They admitted that. Not a drop lands on your hands. And you know, when you're at the gas station and you just accidentally even brush sometimes the gas nozzle, you smell it, don't you? Sometimes it takes a long time to get off your hands. If she had touched that gas, she would have smelled the gas. And yet you heard the evidence at the scene. They went and smelled her. Because it kind of bothered them at the scene. Remember? They're like, does she smell like gas? Everything else smells like gas. How could she not? And it bothered him. It bothered Hendricks enough that he was the only one at the scene that actually took the theory of suicide seriously. And he just looked up. Maybe Bemal had another attempt or something. He was the only one that had that doubt. And said, maybe this is actually more consistent with a suicide than it is a murder. He had that doubt. The Austin Police Department had that doubt. Now, Detective Cummings apparently didn't because he was in charge of the homicide, right? I have never in my career had a homicide case where the homicide detective did not come testify. That's how proud he is of his investigation. You didn't even meet him. They didn't want you to meet him because mainly what we heard about Detective Cummings, right, was what all he didn't do. What all he didn't swab. They did take some swabs of my client's hands at the scene. That would have told you whether there was gas on your hands beyond a reasonable doubt, wouldn't it? Guess where they are? They're right here. They weren't sent off to the lab. The gas can full of gas was sent off to the lab to see if there was gas in the gas can. But the critical question is, did she pour the gas on him? And the answer's sitting in here. And they didn't test it. But they want you to convict her of capital murder. Simple test. I asked her, could you have done it if they'd asked? Oh, sure. Yeah, the only thing we don't test is skin. Bodily fluids. Why not this? You think it's because they know that their theory is bunk? You think it's because they know that it's not going to come back with any gas on my client's hands? Because she did not douse him. He doused himself. The boxer shorts, remember those have gas on it, but they're outside the bathroom. Isn't that consistent with a man who's manipulating that gas himself? He's pouring the gas, some of it spills. He takes the cloth, he wipes it up. Some of it's on his hands, he wipes his boxer shorts. Takes the shorts off. We know that they're not a part of anything that happened in the bathroom because they're outside and they're unburned. So the gas got on it before he went in there, took the shorts off on the outside. He got into the tub, he doused himself, and then he asked his wife, take that white bucket outside and close the door. And after that, we really don't know what happened, other than the ignition's in there, the lighter's in there, the candles are in there, and the door's closed. And here's how we know it wasn't her. Reardon did say the one thing that's true about fire that we already kind of know, and that is it goes up and out. And it goes instantly. And that's what it did, remember? That's the fire pattern. It goes up and it goes over and it seals the paint on the door shut. And that would have happened in a flash. Fire's faster than anybody can swing a door after having to go into the bathroom at least enough to avoid any drop whatsoever on yourself or on the floor. That closed door proves she did not do this. That closed door proves that he lit that. Could have done all kind of testing in this case, right? We've heard that from various lab people. We didn't do any DNA testing, okay? Very last, at the 11th hour, they realized they didn't have the proof, so they're sending off for fingerprints. Okay, great. That's great. And the fingerprints confirm what we know, right? That she moved that bucket and that she helped him tape everything. That's the one thing they didn't print. Ignition source. The candle. Isn't that the most relevant thing? Whose fingerprints are on that candle? Who touched that thing last? What about DNA? That's a lot easier to... DNA is either there or it's not there. You don't have to make 7 points of reference and ridge detail and all that stuff with fingerprints. DNA is easy. It's either there or it's not there. Not a single test. They want every day of the rest of her life, but they can't run that test. Even the district attorney's office didn't send these off. They could, you heard, they sent off for some fingerprints, realized at the end they needed those. Why didn't they send these off? This is the relevant evidence. This shows who moved that gas. No test. Just accusations. And a lot of photographs. And ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to look at. It pains you. It does. You feel for that man because it's obviously so painful. And I think what the trick was is let's just give them so many gory pictures that that's going to get us over our hump of reasonable doubt. Maybe they'll just be so upset that this happened that they'll find her guilty. It takes more than accusations. So then we finally have our day in trial, in court. And we get some neutral witnesses that have some very, very interesting insight, right? These are not Reardon, who's friends with everybody and has a kind of a dog in the fight. These are folks from San Antonio. And the burn doctor, remember him, the colonel? He contradicted Reardon completely, because Reardon's theory only works if there's more burns to the bottom half, right, of the feet. You saw that? And he got up in excruciating detail, started with the head and worked his way down. Even burns. Head to toe. Theory doesn't work. The burn patterns don't match. And Reardon knew it. Who are you going to trust more about burn patterns? Reardon or that corporal at the Brooke Army Burn Center who deals with all kinds of burns, worse than you can even imagine? You believe him. He also told you if there's any doubt in your mind that why would someone do this to themselves? How could someone do this to themselves? Well, he cleared that up for you, didn't he? Because he said, I had a burn patient, 99% burns. Was alert enough, he had tried to kill himself and was alert enough to blame someone else. It happens. It's reasonable. He also told you something that contradicted Reardon. Remember, Reardon's theory, he said legs were open. Well, they weren't. We know that. The doctor told you that. The doctor told you everything was burnt except that which was not exposed. The head, the neck, the back of the tub, because he was lying still, and his penis, and his buttocks where he was laying in the tub. His legs weren't open. Photos tell you his legs weren't open. Common sense and logic tell you his legs weren't open. Why were they closed? Because he's dousing it on himself. It's cold. Mr. Sawyer, it's that one place that's just kind of hard to get past that. That's a man who did it to himself, not a man who is sitting after only having one girlfriend his entire life, ready for a sensual massage from this beautiful girl. He'd have been erect. Certainly wouldn't have been out. That's for sure. Would not have been tucked where it was perfectly protected from the fire. No one met Dr. Molina, who I loved. I wish she'd moved to Austin. She, I thought, did a great job of explaining her job. And sometimes those guys can be a little sciencey and not so good at explaining things. And she came and she admitted to you that absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that he died of his injuries from the fire. But I said, well, how'd you get to homicide? Remember what she said? Oh, that was what the police said. That's their accusation. That's what they told me. So now we're back to where we started, an accusation. It's the accusation from B-Mall. And while we can feel for B-Mall, he was a troubled man. We brought you some of that evidence. They didn't bring you much evidence at all about B-Mall. And this idea that they actually investigated this as a suicide is ridiculous. You don't go to his work. You don't ask his co-workers what time did he get there. Did he leave? Was he upset? Did he cry? What happened? Nothing. Nothing. They didn't consider that. They had rushed to judgment. Within 6 minutes, had that woman in custody and arrested. We brought you the evidence of his financial troubles. We brought you an expert to talk about some things that we might not be as familiar with as Americans. We may have all had pressure from our families, but this is an intense cultural pressure. It's an intense social network and system that makes it a little different from both of these, for both of the Patels. Makes it different for him because there's so many expectations on him. There's so much pressure on him. He hasn't lived up to the family expectation. He certainly hasn't done as well as his father and his uncles and his cousins. He hasn't done very well at all, as a matter of fact. And the one thing an Indian man has to do is get married. And the one thing a husband does is take care of his wife and support her. She finally gets here. He's about to snap before she gets here, but she finally gets here, and he realizes he can't even do the most basic of expectations from a Hindu man. He can't provide for her. He can't pay his rent. He takes her to the doctor, which is why those medical records are in evidence. And if you know, he doesn't want to pay for a lab. They want her to go to the lab. He doesn't want to pay for it. The phone records show you that he was calling his father that whole night. What do you think? For help. Help, Dad. My wife's sick, and I don't know what to do. Probably didn't make his father very happy. You can't even fulfill the most basic expectations of that family. I asked you what kind of proof you would want if your loved ones were on trial for capital murder. I know you'd want more than an accusation. Give her what you would want for your family, for yourself, if the state of Texas came and grabbed you and accused you of something. Hold them to their burden of proof. Make them prove to you. Because otherwise, the law demands an acquittal in this case. It's not enough to accuse. You have to prove. The only verdict that is supported by the evidence that you've heard this week is not guilty.
Ladies and gentlemen. Shriya Patel is guilty of capital murder. How do we know that? Because Bimal Patel told us that. Basically, this is one of those cases where he had a chance to speak from the grave. He was horribly burned. You saw those pictures, and I'm not going to put them back up there, about what he looked like when he came out of that bathroom, when he was lying there on the floor. His skin was coming off in sheets. He'd already degloved his toes, his hands. He was in terrible pain, and all he could say was, "Why did you do this to me? Why did you burn me?" Why would anybody make that up? Why would anybody make that? There's no reason for that. He was delighted. Let's just say that Bimal Patel married up is like the understatement of the century. Bimal Patel was bouncing along from one kind of dead-end job to another, having a good old time. Dad was taking care of him. Yeah, he couldn't meet his financial obligations, but Dad was helping him out. Dad bought his wife a car. Nothing was wrong with Bimal. And then, yeah, he wrote an email to one of his friends. Dad had surgery yesterday. I'm kind of stressed. You know, I'm fine, but I'm gonna snap, but not bad. You know, just hit me up later tonight. I mean, that was 2 months before this, and it's not suicidal. It's just a guy who's got a problem. Here he is, married to a beautiful woman, and life is good for Bimal. But let's look at Shriya. Here she is. Now, we can question how traditional of a Hindu Shriya is, since we already know she lost her virginity to some other guy and was using this marriage as a way to make that other guy jealous back in India. And, you know, if you look at states 142, which is a lot of documents of both parties, but primarily Shriya, you'll see she'd been to the academic college in London. She'd She'd studied in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. She'd been around. She wasn't just a little lady sitting in a little hut in somewhere in India making out chapatis all day. She was a pretty sophisticated person. She'd been around. And so she's there, and she's used to this upper class lifestyle with servants and what have you. And that's why, and so the Patels, these hotel Patels that everybody knows are rich, let's go join forces with them. And so she gets over here, and what does she find? She finds he's not rich. His dad may be rich, but he's not rich. He's living in this tiny little apartment. It's kind of a mess. You know, he's got this dead-end job. I'm supposed to just sit here all day and do this? She already didn't want to be in this marriage. Now she finds out she married this real loser. That's her motive, ladies and gentlemen. That's why this happened. She didn't want to do this anymore and didn't see any way out. I'll grant you, that we all know there's plenty of other ways out. But she didn't see that. And so she decided to kill Bimal Patel. Why she decided to do it in this extremely horrible way, I have not a clue. You might ask the same thing. If Bimal decided to commit suicide, why would he do it in this extremely horrible way? Apparently one person has done that in the past. We know that from Dr. Concio. But really, is that the way anybody would really commit suicide? Or why would you murder somebody that way unless you really hated them and you were really going to torture them? The evidence we have here is he said, "Why did you burn me? Why did you burn me?" But let's look at some other things. The bathroom door was sealed shut. Okay? He was trying to get out. Don't you know he was screaming? Don't you know when he kicked that door hard enough to make it break open like it did, that was making some noise? Did she come over there and open the door for him? Or try to open the door? No. Did she call 911? No. What happens when Stanford, the passerby who works for Travis County Sheriff's Office, I gotta go. I'm out of here. I gotta go. That's what she wanted to do. I'm out of here. So, that's not the sign of a wife who was being faithful, who was just obeying these orders, however bizarre. And you heard that even from the defense's own expert this morning, that no, you don't go around like some sort of automaton, like a robot. Oh, go get gasoline. I go get gasoline. No. You call up the family. You say, this is nuts. He wants me to help burn him. Can you talk to him? What's wrong with this guy? You talk to people just like anybody else would. You go get a psychiatrist for your husband, but you don't just follow instructions like that. Why were there cotton balls in his nose? We don't know. Do not know that. There's some things we don't know. Whether there was water in the tub when this happened, or how she got him to lie in that tub, I do not know. Why he was doing that, we do not know. Those are questions. But what we do know is that she burned him. All the physical evidence tells us he was lying in the tub with his head at the far end, his feet at the faucet end. The fire started in the back corner by the faucet and was essentially an explosion that just scorched him immediately. We know that. And so we know that he is not the one who threw the gasoline, because he was lying in the tub. And somebody had to go put that cup back in the bucket, or whatever carried the gasoline, however it was introduced into that room, somebody took it and put it neatly down in the hallway. So it was clearly done by somebody else other than Bimal Patel, meaning Shriya Patel. That's how we know she did it. Where did the gasoline go? Well, see, the defense wants to say, we know there were 2 gallons in there. Well, the reason they know there were 2 gallons in there was because Mr. Vallejo, who was the gas attendant, said he thought she filled it up. But he didn't know. To tell you the truth, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know how much gas was purchased that day. And we don't know how much gas was there to begin with in the first place. So the fact that, according to the defense, there's some missing gasoline, I mean, we don't know how much was there in the first place. We really don't know whether there was any missing or not. You can tell from the reactions of the parties in this case who did what. Beemel, why did you kill me? Why did you kill me? We know that she just wanted to leave. She was calm and she just wanted to leave. We know from Chelsea Schwerking, she didn't want to be in this marriage in the first place. She wanted to get out as soon as she could, especially when she saw that she was married to a completely different person than what she wanted to be married to or thought she was getting married to. Now, despite all the stuff we've said about Beemel, I mean, he wasn't going to ever set the world on fire, maybe, you know, so to speak, to use a poor choice of terms. But he had a lot of friends. All these people out here were his friends. He was a very nice guy. And he may not have been what his family thought a young man should be doing, but he was a human being. He was a very nice human being who had people who cared about him and he cared about them. And he's gone. We'll never see him again. You know, they could have filed for a divorce. She could have left. She could have gone back to India. She could have stayed here maybe. I don't know what her visa deal was. But she didn't have to do this. She did not have to do this. And she chose to do it in a particularly horrible way. She took this fellow, guy standing around in his khakis and a t-shirt at the grist mill down in Green. She took that guy. That's okay. And incinerated him. Left him like that. And you remember what the testimony was. I can't remember what the testimony was. This would have you believe that he's burnt evenly all over. That was not the testimony I heard, that there were some gaps in there. Some things were covered up, other things weren't. That's for you to decide. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the person who did that is a monster. Premeditatedly, cold-bloodedly, with active malice, did that to a human being. That defendant, Shriya Patel, is guilty of capital murder and needs to go to prison for life. I trust you'll return that verdict. Thank you.
Okay, jury members, that concludes the arguments in the case. Now, one matter before, I'm going to ask y'all to go back in the jury room, but Matthew Sparks and Reagan Hurt, where are y'all? Can y'all stand up and come over here? Up until now, we haven't told you, but you were alternates in the case. And one of these other 12 people had gone down to take their place, and you still may have a chance to do that. When they go back into the jury room to deliberate, you're not to go with them. And so I'm going to ask the rest of the jury members to go back into the jury room to deliberate. And Jose, can you...
May I make my addition just for record? We are asking that under the new rule that they actually be allowed to go back, but just told not to deliberate.
We object. Right. So, jury members, I'll ask that are still in the box. I'll ask y'all to go back to the jury room. You two, like I say, until